To the channel of my colleague Agnes Thompson, and my name is Beatrice. I will share my story with you. Subscribe to us.
My name is Beatrice Sterling, and I'm 72 years old. My hair, once a vibrant auburn, now shimmers like moonlight on calm water, and the hands that once kneaded countless loaves of bread and embraced my children are now crisscrossed with a delicate web of wrinkles, traces of long years filled with joy and, alas, sometimes disappointment. I live in a cozy little house on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, where every corner holds memories of days long past, of my late husband, George, and of the children who grew up and left the nest. My son, Robert, always had a knack for enterprise. Since childhood, he'd try to sell me his drawings or rent his teddy bear for candy. I always found it amusing, a kind of innocent cunning. His wife, Kimberly, a woman with a sharp mind and an equally sharp tongue, perfectly complemented his business acumen. My daughter, Jessica, was a softer soul, but unfortunately, easily swayed by her brother and his wife. I loved them all, no matter what, always trying to be a pillar of support, a source of unwavering love. I truly believed in the sanctity of family, the idea that no matter what, we'd always have each other's backs. This belief was something George and I had instilled in them from a young age, a core value of our household. George, bless his soul, passed away 5 years ago. He was a good man, a hard worker, and he left me comfortably situated. Not extravagantly rich, but certainly not wanting for anything. I had a good pension, some investments, and the house was fully paid off. I enjoyed my quiet life, tending to my rose garden, volunteering at the local library, and spending time with my few cherished friends. Life was peaceful, predictable, and frankly, exactly how I liked it in my golden years. The peace, however, was often interrupted by the demands of my children, particularly Robert and Kimberly. They had a way of making their problems my problems, their desires my responsibilities. It started subtly enough. A request for a small loan for a new business venture that never quite took off. A plea for help with a down payment on a car or tuition for the grandkids, my grandkids, bless their hearts, whom I adored, even if their parents sometimes made me grit my teeth. I always helped, because that's what mothers do, right? You help your children. You sacrifice. You give. But the asks grew larger, more frequent, and less about genuine need and more about convenience. One sunny Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Robert, his voice unusually cheerful, almost saccharine. "Mom, great news. Kimberly and I, and Jessica and Tom, we're planning an amazing family trip. A cruise to the Caribbean. Imagine us, all together, relaxing, enjoying the sun. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" My heart, for a fleeting moment, fluttered with genuine excitement. A family trip. It had been years since we'd done something like that, something truly for fun, not just a strained holiday gathering. "Oh, Robert, that sounds lovely. Where are you thinking of going? When?" His cheerfulness intensified. "Well, we were thinking of late December, perfect time to escape the cold. And as for where, well, we were thinking of the Tropical Paradise Cruise Line, 7 days, all-inclusive, stopping at some fantastic islands. We even looked into some great excursions, swimming with dolphins, snorkeling, private beach bungalows. It's going to be incredible." He paused, and I could almost hear the calculated smile on his face. This was it. The shoe was about to drop. I braced myself. "And, Mom," he continued, his voice dropping slightly, "we all agreed it would be so much more special if you joined us. But, these things aren't cheap. So, we figured, since you're, retired and have more flexible finances, you could, cover the costs for everyone. Think of it as your big treat for the family. A grand gesture." My jaw tightened. Flexible finances. Grand gesture. That was their code for you pay for everything. The initial warmth in my chest instantly congealed into a cold knot. It wasn't an invitation, it was an expectation, a demand masked as an offer. And it wasn't just for me, it was for everyone. Robert, Kimberly, Jessica, Tom, and their kids. A small army, all on my dime. I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head, A trick George taught me whenever I felt anger bubbling up. Robert, I said, trying to keep my voice even, that's a very generous thought, but no, thank you. I appreciate the invitation, but I won't be paying for an entire family cruise. That's a considerable amount of money, and I have other plans for my savings. There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line, a strained, almost offended silence. Then Kimberly's voice, sharp and clear, cut in from the background. What? Beatrice, are you serious? This is a family trip. You want us to miss out just because you're being stingy? Kimberly, it's not about being stingy, I replied, my voice now firm. It's about personal finances and respecting boundaries. I'm not obligated to fund your luxury vacations. Robert quickly chimed back in, trying to smooth things over, but with an underlying current of irritation. Mom, come on. It's just a few $1,000s. Think of the memories. The grandkids would be so disappointed. Don't you want to make them happy? The old guilt trip. The classic maneuver. For years, it had worked like a charm. The mention of the grandkids, their innocent faces, their imagined disappointment. But something inside me had shifted. Maybe it was age, or maybe it was just years of feeling like an ATM. I was tired of it. Tired of being viewed as a bottomless pit of funds, not a person with my own needs and desires. Robert, I stated, my voice leaving no room for argument, my answer is no. I will not be paying for this trip. If you all want to go, you'll need to figure out the finances yourselves. Have a lovely time, though. And with that, I politely but firmly ended the call. I felt a pang of sadness, a dull ache that accompanied every one of these increasingly transactional interactions with my children. Was this what family had become? A ledger of debits and credits? I tried to shake it off, to focus on my roses, but the conversation replayed in my mind. The entitlement, the thinly veiled expectation. It was unsettling. I decided to treat myself to a nice cup of tea and a book, a small act of self-care to soothe my ruffled feathers. Later that afternoon, I decided to check my bank account online, just a routine check of my recent transactions. I scrolled through the list, noting my usual pension deposit, a payment for my utility bill, and then, my eyes froze. A large, unfamiliar charge. Then another. And another. My heart hammered against my ribs. A charge for $12,450. 00. Tropical Paradise Cruise Line, group booking. Immediately followed by $3,200. 00. Airfare, round trip, Miami. And then $1,800. 00. Excursion package, Caribbean. A total of nearly $17,500. $17,500. My blood ran cold. They had done it. They had actually done it. They had taken my no, thank you, and twisted it into an affirmative, somehow gaining access to my card details. The sheer audacity, the brazen disrespect, left me breathless. It was beyond what I had ever imagined, a level of betrayal that truly stung. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about consent, about the very definition of a relationship. They had bypassed my wishes entirely, treating me like a senile old woman incapable of managing her own affairs, or perhaps, simply as a resource to be exploited. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone. Not to call Robert, not to call Kimberly. My first call was to my bank. I explained the situation, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. These are unauthorized charges. I never approved them. I explicitly told my son I would not pay for this trip. The bank representative, a kind young woman named Sarah, listened patiently. I understand, Mrs. Sterling. We can certainly investigate these charges. Can you confirm if your card information was compromised in any way? Did you share your card details recently? I paused. No, I hadn't shared them. Not directly. But Robert knew my old card number for previous loans that were rarely repaid. He must have kept it, or perhaps gotten it from somewhere else. The thought made my stomach churn. No, I didn't, I said, but I suspect my son may have used my old card number. He had it for a previous transaction. Understood, Sarah said. Given the nature of the charges and your immediate report, we can initiate a fraud investigation and block your current card immediately. We'll issue you a new one. As for these specific transactions, we'll dispute them. It might take a few business days for the funds to be provisionally returned to your account while the investigation is ongoing. Would you like to proceed with the cancellation and fraud report? Yes, I said, without a moment's hesitation. Absolutely. Cancel everything. Block the card. Report it as fraud. I want every single one of those charges reversed. A sense of cold, hard resolve settled over me. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about drawing a line in the sand. This was about reclaiming my autonomy, my dignity. They had crossed a boundary, and they would learn there were consequences. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't shout. I would simply act. And my actions would speak volumes. I sat there, staring at the screen, watching the pending charges. They weren't yet fully processed, thankfully. The bank representative confirmed they could stop them before they went through completely. A small victory, but a significant one. I felt a strange mix of anger and grim satisfaction. They thought they were so clever, so entitled. They thought they could just take what they wanted. But they were about to learn that Beatrice Sterling was not to be trifled with. The new card was ordered, the old one instantly deactivated. I felt a sense of quiet triumph. The clock was ticking. They probably thought they had gotten away with it, that I wouldn't notice, or that I'd eventually just shrug and accept it. They were wrong. Very wrong. I imagined them, blissfully unaware, dreaming of tropical beaches and pina coladas, all on my supposedly flexible dime. Little did they know, their tropical dreams were about to evaporate. The phone rang again. My heart gave a little jump. It was Robert. Mom, everything's booked. Isn't that fantastic? We're all set. I just got the confirmations. His voice was bubbling with excitement, oblivious to the storm he had just brewed. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of truth. My voice, when I spoke, was calm, almost eerily so. Robert, I said, I just spoke with my bank. There was a slight hesitation on his end. Oh? Why? Is everything all right? The cheerfulness had a sudden crack in it, a flicker of unease. No, Robert, everything is not all right, I continued, my tone unwavering. I just reported unauthorized charges on my credit card. For airfare, hotels, and a cruise package. Charges that I explicitly told you I would not be paying for. A stunned silence. Then, a sharp intake of breath. It was Kimberly. What? Beatrice, what are you talking about? We just thought you'd come around. It's for family. No, Kimberly, I retorted, you didn't. Just think. You took it upon yourselves to use my financial information without my consent. That's called fraud. And I've reported it as such. All the bookings have been canceled. All the charges reversed. Another silence, longer this time, filled with unspoken shock and disbelief. Then Robert's voice, strained and high-pitched. Canceled. Mom, what have you done? They're refusing our tickets. They're saying our booking is invalid. My turn to be calm, to deliver the blow. They're refusing your tickets, Robert, because I canceled them. I told the bank it was an unauthorized transaction. And it was. But, Robert spluttered, clearly flustered. Mom, you can't do that. This is our trip. Our family trip. What about the deposits? What about everything we planned? What about everything I planned, Robert? I asked, a hint of steel in my voice. What about my no, thank you? Did you really think I was going to pay for everything? Did you really think you could just take advantage of me like that? The line went quiet again, save for some muffled, frantic whispers in the background. Kimberly, no doubt, realizing the full extent of the disaster. I could almost picture their faces, growing pale as the reality sank in. Their grand, free vacation, meticulously planned at my expense, had just vanished into thin air. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I had made my point, but the sting of their presumption, their outright theft, was still fresh. This was just the beginning. Consider this a lesson, I said, my voice cutting through their hushed panic. A very expensive lesson on respecting boundaries. And on asking, not taking. I heard a click on the other end, signaling that Kimberly had probably hung up in fury. Robert mumbled something incoherent, then his line went dead too. I hung up my phone, my hand still trembling slightly, but this time not from anger, but from a quiet, determined satisfaction. My family, my dear, ungrateful children, were in for a rude awakening. Their Caribbean dream had just turned into a Texan nightmare. And I, Beatrice, was just getting started. I hung up the phone, a strange sense of calm washing over me as I imagined their frantic faces. They had no idea what was truly coming next. Not a single clue. The silence after the call was deafening, yet somehow satisfying. I imagined the chaos erupting in Robert and Kimberly's house, the shouting, the accusations, the desperate scrambling for a solution to their now non-existent luxury cruise. For a moment, a tiny flicker of my old self, the mother who always wanted to smooth things over, felt a pang of guilt. But it was quickly extinguished by the cold fire of indignation. They had truly pushed me too far this time. It wasn't just the money, it was the blatant disregard for my autonomy, the assumption that my resources were theirs for the taking. This wasn't just a misstep, it was a calculated act of disrespect and, quite frankly, theft. The next day passed in a surreal blur. My phone, usually quiet, now buzzed with calls and texts from my children, and even from my daughter-in-law, Kimberly, whose number I had, until now, kept on speed dial. I ignored them all. I needed time to think, to process, and more importantly, to plan. This wasn't just about reversing charges. This was about a fundamental shift in our relationship, one that needed to be addressed with more than just a phone call. I knew their first reaction would be anger, then probably an attempt to manipulate me with guilt. They'd try the poor grandkids angle again. They'd likely try to paint me as the villain, the cruel, stingy mother who ruined their perfect family vacation. Let them. I had already accepted that. My peace of mind, my self-respect, were worth more than their temporary disapproval. That evening, as the Texas sunset painted the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, I sat on my porch swing, sipping a cup of herbal tea. My mind, usually a whirlwind of daily tasks and quiet reflections, was now a strategic battlefield. I started to think about all the other favors I had extended over the years. The loans that were never repaid. The countless times I'd babysat the grandkids when they wanted a weekend getaway. The financial assistance for everything from medical bills to car repairs, always given without question, often without even a thank you. It wasn't just Robert and Kimberly. Jessica, my sweet Jessica, had also become accustomed to my open wallet. She'd often complain about her husband Tom's meager salary, hinting at how much easier their lives would be with a little help from me. And I'd always obliged, wanting to ease her burden, to see her happy. But now, looking back, I realized it wasn't about easing burdens. It was about enabling a lifestyle they couldn't afford, a lifestyle that was constantly propped up by my generosity. My biggest concern, however, was not just the financial aspect. It was the principle. They had crossed a line that, for me, was sacred. Trust. Respect. These were the pillars of any healthy relationship, especially family. And they had crumbled them without a second thought. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I called my lawyer, Mr. Harrison, a kind, astute man who had handled George's estate and my own affairs for years. Mr. Harrison, I began, I need your advice on a family matter. A rather delicate one. I recounted the entire saga of the cruise, the unauthorized charges, and my subsequent actions. He listened patiently, interjecting only occasionally with clarifying questions. When I finished, there was a brief silence. Beatrice, he said, his voice grave, what they did, in simple terms, is credit card fraud. Using your card details without your explicit permission, especially after you denied their request, is a serious offense. You were entirely within your rights to report it to the bank. In fact, you should have. What do you intend to do now? I intend to protect myself, Mr. Harrison, I replied, my voice steady. And perhaps teach them a much-needed lesson. This wasn't the first time they've tried to take advantage, but it will be the last. I want to know my options. Legally. We discussed various scenarios. He explained the nuances of gift tax laws, the implications of outstanding loans, which, legally, were often considered gifts if not properly documented, and the possibility of pursuing charges for fraud, though he advised against that unless absolutely necessary, citing the emotional toll it would take on me. However, he said, there's another angle. Your will. Your estate planning. If you want to send a clear message without resorting to criminal charges, that's where you have significant leverage. A slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. Leverage. Yes, that was the word. Tell me more, Mr. Harrison, I said. Over the next few days, Mr. Harrison and I worked meticulously. We reviewed my current will, which, predictably, left everything equally to Robert and Jessica. We also went through my financial records, noting down every loan I had given, the dates, the amounts. As Mr. Harrison had predicted, most of these were undocumented, mere verbal agreements, making them legally difficult to enforce as debts. But I had my own records, meticulous notes in a small ledger I kept hidden away. It wasn't about legal enforceability. It was about the truth, about showing them the full picture of their financial dependence on me. I decided not to disinherit them entirely. That felt too harsh, too final. After all, they were still my children, and I still loved them, albeit with a heavier heart. But I certainly wasn't going to leave things as they were. My new will was crafted with precision. It stipulated that a significant portion of my estate would go to charities I deeply cared about, the local animal shelter, a scholarship fund for underprivileged students in Austin, and a foundation supporting elderly care. This was not just a punitive measure. It was something I genuinely wanted to do, to leave a positive legacy beyond my immediate family. As for Robert and Jessica, their inheritance would be significantly reduced. But there was a twist. The will included a clause that stated any outstanding documented debts to me would be deducted from their share. And while most of my loans weren't legally documented, I had a plan for that. I also established a small, separate trust for my grandchildren, managed by an independent trustee, to be dispersed when they reached the age of 25. This was important to me. I didn't want them to suffer for their parents' misdeeds. They were innocent. This also ensured that Robert and Jessica wouldn't get their hands on all the money meant for their children. During this time, the phone calls and texts from Robert and Kimberly intensified. They started with anger, then shifted to pleading. Mom, please. This is a disaster. The cruise line won't refund our money. We're out thousands of dollars because of you. Robert wailed in one voicemail. How could you do this to us, Beatrice? Kimberly's text read, we thought you loved us. Are you trying to ruin our lives? Jessica, to her credit, was less aggressive, more confused. Mom, what happened? Robert says you canceled everything. Is it true? Why would you do that? Her calls sounded genuinely hurt, bewildered. I still didn't answer. I needed to let the consequences sink in. I needed them to understand the gravity of their actions, not just the financial implications, but the emotional damage they had inflicted. I wanted them to stew, to worry, to realize that their actions had direct and immediate repercussions. The silence from my end was, I hoped, louder than any shouting match could have been. It forced them to confront their own behavior, to wonder what I was doing, what I was planning. And I was planning. Oh, I was planning. The day I signed the new will, I felt a sense of profound relief. It was done. My wishes were formally documented. Mr. Harrison assured me that it was ironclad. Beatrice, he said, as I prepared to leave his office, this is a very strong message you're sending. Are you prepared for the fallout? They will undoubtedly be upset. Mr. Harrison, I replied, meeting his gaze, I've been upset for years. It's time for them to be. And perhaps, just perhaps, it will make them think twice before trying to take advantage of me, or anyone else, ever again. I drove home, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. My mind drifted to the upcoming family Christmas gathering, which was traditionally held at my house. Would they still come? Would they try to act as if nothing had happened? Or would they use it as an opportunity for confrontation? I suspected the latter. But I was ready. More ready than they could ever imagine. The cruise was just the first domino. The real lesson was yet to come. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw a familiar car parked outside. Robert's car. And Kimberly's. And Jessica's. They were waiting for me. All of them. My stomach tightened, but I felt no fear. Only a steely resolve. This was it. The confrontation I had been anticipating. I stepped out of my car, keys jingling in my hand, and walked towards my front door, where my 3 children and their spouses stood, their faces a mixture of anger, desperation, and confusion. The stage was set. This wasn't just a canceled cruise. This was a reckoning. And I had a few more surprises in store. As I approached my front door, the air crackled with unspoken tension. Robert, ever the frontman, stepped forward, his face a contorted mask of frustration and barely contained fury. Kimberly stood rigidly beside him, arms crossed, her eyes narrowed like a hawk sizing up its prey. Jessica, however, looked genuinely distressed, her eyes swollen and red, a stark contrast to her brother and sister-in-law's aggressive posture. Tom, Jessica's husband, hovered awkwardly behind her, looking as uncomfortable as a cat in a dog park. "Mom, what was that all about?" Robert blurted out, his voice sharp and accusatory, before I even reached the porch steps. "Canceling our trip? Do you have any idea how much money we've lost because of you? The cruise line said it's non-refundable." I stopped at the bottom of the steps, deliberately taking my time, letting the silence hang heavy. I looked at each of them in turn, my gaze unwavering. "Good afternoon, children," I said, my voice calm, almost serene. "No, Robert, you lost money because you attempted to defraud me. I explicitly told you I would not pay for that trip. You chose to ignore my wishes and use my financial information without my consent. That is a crime. And I acted accordingly." "A crime?" Kimberly shrieked, taking a step forward. "We're your family. How dare you accuse us of a crime? We just wanted to do something nice for you, a family vacation." A family vacation that I was expected to finance entirely, without my consent. I countered, raising an eyebrow. "Is that your definition of nice, Kimberly? Because it sounds remarkably like exploitation to me." Jessica, tears welling in her eyes, finally spoke. "Mom, why didn't you just talk to us? Why did you have to cancel everything? The kids were so excited." "Jessica," I said, my voice softening slightly for her, "I did talk to you. I said no. You chose not to listen. As for the children, I deeply regret their disappointment. But their parents' actions are not mine to bear the consequences for. Perhaps this is a good opportunity to teach them that actions have consequences and that entitlement is not a family value." Robert scoffed. "Entitlement? You're being ridiculous, Mom. You have plenty of money. What's a few $1,000s to you? We're your children." "And because you are my children, Robert," I said, stepping up onto the porch, forcing them to take a step back, "I expect more from you. I expect respect. I expect honesty. And I expect you to earn your own way, just as your father and I did." I paused, letting my words sink in. "Since you're all here," I continued, "and since we're finally having this long overdue discussion, why don't we come inside? I believe there are a few other matters we need to discuss, matters of family and of finances that have been left unaddressed for far too long." They hesitated, but curiosity, mixed with apprehension, finally won out. They followed me into the living room, the familiar space suddenly feeling charged with a different kind of energy. I motioned for them to sit, but they remained standing, fidgeting nervously. "Sit," I instructed, my voice firm. "This will take a while." Reluctantly, they settled onto the couches and armchairs, their expressions ranging from defiant, Robert and Kimberly, to genuinely bewildered, Jessica and Tom. I remained standing, facing them, the setting sun casting long shadows behind me. "For years," I began, my voice clear and steady, "I have given to each of you without question. Loans for businesses, down payments for cars, tuition fees, help with medical bills, even just everyday living expenses. I did so out of love, out of a desire to see you succeed, to ease your burdens. I believed I was helping my children." I picked up a small, leather-bound ledger from the coffee table, the one I had shown to Mr. Harrison. Their eyes widened slightly as they recognized it. It was the book I had always used to jot down household expenses, grocery lists, little things. They had no idea it contained anything else. "What's that, Mom?" Robert asked, a hint of trepidation in his voice. "This, Robert," I said, opening the ledger, "is a record. A record of all the times I helped you. All the loans that were never repaid. All the instances where you implicitly or explicitly asked for financial assistance, and I provided it. I began to read, calmly, systematically. On March 12th, 5 years ago, $15,000 for Robert's innovative tech startup. Never saw a dime back, Robert. On July 1st, 4 years ago, $7,000 for Kimberly's boutique clothing line. Closed within 6 months, no repayment. 3 years ago, Jessica, $5,000 for Mark's unexpected medical bills. Though Mark's insurance should have covered most of it. I continued, itemizing dates, amounts, and the supposed reasons for the money. The figures quickly climbed into the tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Robert and Kimberly's faces grew progressively paler, their initial defiance melting into a mixture of shock and dawning horror. Jessica listened with a growing sense of shame, her head bowed. Tom looked from me to his wife, then to Robert, his eyes filled with a new understanding. In total, I said, finally closing the ledger with a soft thud, over the past 5 years since your father passed, I have given, or rather, lent to you all, over $350,000. And of that, precisely zero has been repaid. A stunned silence filled the room. No one spoke. The sheer weight of the number hung in the air, undeniable. You see, I continued, I always believed that family meant support. But somewhere along the way, that support turned into an expectation, an entitlement. You stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as a convenient source of funds. You took my generosity for granted. You took me for granted. I looked directly at Robert and Kimberly. Your attempt to charge $17,000 to my account for a cruise I explicitly refused was not just an isolated incident, a mistake. It was the culmination of years of financial exploitation. It was the final straw. It showed me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you had no respect for me, no respect for my wishes, and no respect for my financial independence. Kimberly finally found her voice, though it was weak. But Mom, we never said those were loans. We thought they were gifts. You never asked for them back. Did you ever offer to pay them back, Kimberly? I challenged, my gaze firm. Did you ever truly consider the impact of constantly draining my resources? Did you ever stop to think that perhaps I, too, might have plans for my money, my retirement, my future? Robert, visibly shaken, tried a different tactic. Mom, we're sorry. We truly are. We got carried away. The cruise was a bad idea. We made a mistake. Please, don't be so hard on us. We'll pay you back. We promise. I smiled, a thin, humorless smile. Oh, I have no doubt you'll try, Robert. But it's a little too late for promises, isn't it? Actions speak louder than words. And your actions have been quite loud indeed. So, what are you going to do, Mom? Jessica asked, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes full of dread. Are you going to cut us off? Cut you off. I repeated. Jessica, you've already cut yourselves off from the kind of relationship we once had. The kind built on mutual respect and genuine love, not financial transaction. As for what I'm going to do, well, that's why I asked Mr. Harrison to come by tomorrow morning. Their eyes widened further. Mr. Harrison. My lawyer. The implications of his involvement were not lost on them. Your father and I worked hard our entire lives to build what we had, I continued, to ensure a comfortable retirement and to leave something behind for you, our children. My will, as it stood, left everything equally to you two. A clean split. A testament to a mother's love and trust. I paused, letting the weight of those words hang in the air, painting a picture of what they had squandered. However, I said, a flicker of steel entering my voice, circumstances change. Trust, once broken, is not easily mended. My will has been updated. Robert gasped, a strangled sound. Kimberly's jaw dropped. Jessica covered her mouth with her hand, tears flowing freely now. As of yesterday, I announced, my voice clear and deliberate, my estate planning has been completely revised. A significant portion of my assets will now go to the charities that George and I always supported, the local animal shelter, a scholarship fund, and a foundation for elderly care. These organizations, unlike some, appreciate every penny and use it for good, without question or expectation. I watched their faces contort with various stages of shock and dismay. The sheer magnitude of what they had lost, not just the cruise, but a substantial future inheritance, was clearly dawning on them. As for the remainder, I continued, a portion will be held in a trust for my grandchildren to be dispersed when they reach adulthood, ensuring they have a foundation for their own lives, independent of any external influences. I gave a pointed look at Robert and Kimberly. And for you, Robert and Jessica, I said, finally directing my gaze squarely at them, the remaining balance will be divided. However, there's a clause. Any documented loans, those that are still outstanding, will be deducted from your share. Robert instantly looked relieved for a split second, then his face fell again. He knew most weren't documented. But Mom, we discussed that with the lawyer. You said they weren't legally binding, he blurted out, a desperate plea in his voice. Legally binding, perhaps not in every instance, I conceded. But remember that ledger? The one detailing over $350,000? I have those records. And while Mr. Harrison advises against protracted legal battles, he did inform me of one simple, undeniable truth regarding inheritance and filial responsibility. A truth that, next to your father's wishes, I value above all else. I looked at them, letting the anticipation build. The silence was thick, punctuated only by Jessica's soft sobs. They were desperate for me to reveal the catch, the final shoe to drop. The revised will, I finally stated, my voice echoing slightly in the tense room, also stipulates that my house, this very house, which you all seemed so eager to inherit, will not be sold. Instead, it will be donated to a local nonprofit organization that provides affordable housing for retired teachers and veterans, effective upon my passing. It will be maintained, cared for, and continue to serve a purpose for those who truly need it. A collective gasp filled the room. This was the true gut punch. The house, the tangible asset they had always coveted, the one place they likely assumed they could eventually sell for a significant sum, was now completely out of their reach. It was a physical manifestation of their loss, a brick-and-mortar symbol of their disregard for me. Robert's face was ashen. Kimberly looked like she had been slapped. Jessica, despite her tears, looked up at me with a new expression, a mix of shock and, perhaps, a glimmer of understanding. Tom simply stared, wide-eyed. So, I concluded, there will be no grand inheritance from the sale of this house. No easy payout from a mother who was taken for granted. This house, like my love, was something to be cherished, not exploited. I paused again, allowing the full weight of my words to settle over them. They were utterly speechless, their previous anger now replaced by a chilling realization of the magnitude of their miscalculation. The visit from Mr. Harrison tomorrow, I continued, is merely to formalize the next steps, including the official notification to the beneficiaries of the revised will. You will receive your copies in due course. And of course, the bank will continue its investigation into the unauthorized charges. I looked at each of them one last time, my gaze lingering on Jessica, then on Robert and Kimberly. This isn't about punishment. Not entirely, I said, my voice softer now, tinged with a deep sadness. It's about boundaries. It's about respect. It's about realizing that a parent's love is not an endless resource to be plundered, but a precious gift to be reciprocated. And it's about learning that true family is built on far more than just financial convenience. I walked over to the front door and opened it, a silent invitation for them to leave. The Texas sun, now sinking below the horizon, cast long, purple shadows across my lawn. The air outside felt cooler, cleaner. I think we're done here for today, I said, gesturing towards the open door. I have my rose garden to tend to and a peaceful evening ahead. They stood frozen for a moment, then slowly, stiffly, began to move towards the exit. Robert and Kimberly, still visibly reeling, were the first to stumble out, their usual swagger completely gone. Jessica lingered, looking at me with a heartbroken expression. Mom, she whispered, I'm so sorry. I really am. I looked at my daughter, the one who had been swayed, not predatory. I know, sweetie, I said, a genuine pang of sadness in my voice. I know. It's not too late for you to learn from this. It's never too late to make amends, not with me, but with yourself. And with your own children. She nodded slowly, a tear tracking down her cheek, and then she, too, walked out, Tom gently guiding her. I watched as they got into their cars, a tense silence hanging between them even as they drove away. The streetlights flickered on, illuminating my quiet home. I closed the door, the click echoing in the sudden emptiness of the living room. A deep sigh escaped me, a mix of exhaustion and catharsis. It was over. The confrontation was done. The truth had been laid bare. They had learned a harsh, undeniable lesson, one that perhaps would force them to finally stand on their own 2 feet, to realize the value of hard work and the true meaning of family. My home felt lighter, cleaner. The air no longer thick with unspoken resentment and hidden agendas. I walked over to the window, watching the last slivers of light fade from the sky. My heart still ached, yes, for the family I wished I had, for the innocence that was lost. But there was also a profound sense of peace. I had stood up for myself. I had protected my legacy. And I had, in my own quiet way, delivered a justice that was long overdue. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be anger, resentment, perhaps even attempts at reconciliation driven by ulterior motives. But for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly free. Free from the burden of their expectations, free from the constant fear of exploitation. I was Beatrice Sterling, not just a source of funds, but a woman of strength, wisdom, and dignity. And tomorrow, I would water my roses, ready for whatever the new day and my new reality might bring. The Caribbean cruise was canceled, but my own journey, my own quiet revolution, had just begun.